Welcome, sleepy soul. Tonight I am your storyteller, your guide through shadows and whispers. Here in the dark corners of imagination, every creak, every shadow, and every whisper has a story to tell. Welcome to Creepytalks, where the night never ends and the tales are waiting for you. The road ended long before Nathan expected it to. According to the GPS, there was still another mile to the cabin, but all he saw now was snow, thick, unbroken, and untouched, swallowing the gravel track. The forest pressed in on both sides, the tall pines bending beneath the weight of winter. He shut off the engine. The silence that followed was too big, like the forest itself was holding its breath. Nathan stepped out, crunching through the snow, pulling his scarf tighter around his face. The cold bit at him, sharp and immediate. Behind him, the car ticked as the metal cooled. He almost turned back. Almost. But he'd come this far. 2 days of driving from the city, half a tank of gas left, and nowhere else to go. The cabin was his uncle's, or had been, before the accident. Nathan hadn't been here since he was 12, but when the lawyer called about the inheritance, the words "a cabin in the woods" had sounded like exactly what he needed. After everything that happened with Claire, the breakup, the sleepless nights, the job he'd quit without notice, a little isolation didn't seem like a bad idea. He grabbed his duffel bag and started up the trail, the pines whispering above him. The cabin appeared suddenly between the trees, 2 stories tall, dark wood nearly black with age, a chimney sagging like a crooked finger. The snow on the roof was unbroken, no tracks, no sign anyone had been here for years. He unlocked the front door with a key that felt too cold to hold. The hinges groaned like something waking up. Inside, it smelled of dust and pine sap. The air was heavy, the kind that had been sitting still for years. Furniture under white sheets, a stone fireplace full of ashes long gone cold. Nathan flicked the light switch. Nothing. The power was out, of course. He found the old kerosene lantern near the door, lit it, and the soft orange glow filled the cabin. Shadows danced along the log walls, and for the first time, Nathan smiled. It felt right, quiet, honest. He unpacked, lit a fire in the hearth, and heated a can of soup over it. The crackling flames filled the silence. It wasn't until the second spoonful that he heard it, a faint tap, tap, tap against the window. Nathan froze. The sound came again. Tap, tap, tap. He turned slowly, eyes darting to the frosted window. Nothing. Just darkness and the shifting glow of the fire reflected in the glass. He waited, listening. The forest was still. No wind, no movement. Maybe a branch, he told himself. Ice falling from the roof. Something ordinary. He forced himself to finish eating, but the tapping echoed in his head long after it stopped. That night, Nathan lay in the loft bed beneath a heavy quilt, the lantern dim beside him. The fire downstairs had burned down to red coals. He could hear the forest breathing outside, the creak of trees, the soft hiss of wind. Then, whispering, faint. So faint he thought it was a wind at first, but then it came again, closer. A voice. No, voices. Overlapping in a strange rhythm, like a chant just on the edge of hearing. Nathan sat up. Hello? The whispering stopped instantly. He listened, holding his breath. The silence that followed felt thick enough to choke on. Then from far away, a single word. Nathan. He scrambled to the window. Nothing but the black sea of trees. The whisper came again, softer, stretched by the wind. Come back. His heart hammered. He shut the curtains and pulled the quilt up to his chin. Sleep didn't come for hours. When it finally did, he dreamed of pine needles and cold, dark soil. Morning brought no comfort. The snow had stopped, but the world outside was still gray, silent, endless. He made coffee on the fire and tried to laugh it off. Voices in the night, maybe just his mind, playing tricks. He'd been under a lot of stress. Maybe that was all it was. To distract himself, he started exploring the cabin. The kitchen was rustic but tidy. The living room had an old radio and a bookshelf full of damp, swollen paperbacks. Upstairs, a single hallway led to two locked doors and a small bathroom. He found the keys hanging on a hook by the stairs. The first door opened to a storage room filled with old furniture and boxes. The second door opened with a long groan. Inside was a bedroom. He knew it instantly. This had been his uncle's room. The air smelled faintly of tobacco and dust. On the desk sat a journal, bound in cracked leather. The first few pages were filled with neat handwriting. December 3rd. The pines are whispering again. I tried not to listen this time, but they sound like her. Like Margaret. God forgive me. I almost called back. Nathan's stomach turned. He flipped ahead. December 8th. They came closer last night. I saw them between the trees, shapes that almost looked human. They don't like the light. Another entry. Greater than December 11th. The whispering stopped when the snow came. I think they're waiting. The last page was dated December 12th, the day his uncle had been found dead in the woods. There were no words on that page, just a smudge of something dark, like dried blood. That night, the whispering returned. Nathan sat by the fire, the journal open in his lap, his eyes darting to the window every few seconds. Tap, tap, tap. The same rhythm as before. He walked to the window, heart pounding. Outside, the pines swayed gently in the moonlight. Snow fell in slow, lazy flakes. And there, between two trees, something stood. A shape, pale and tall, almost blending with the snow. It wasn't moving. It wasn't human. Nathan stumbled backward. The shape tilted its head as if listening. Then from the darkness, "Nathan!" The whisper came from inside the cabin this time. The lantern flickered. The air grew heavy and cold. Something was behind him. Nathan didn't dare move. The sound was so close now that it felt like someone was standing right behind him, breathing, just barely, as if trying not to be heard. He forced himself to turn. Nothing. The living room was empty, the fire dimming to a soft orange glow. The whispering had stopped. Only the wind hissed faintly through the cracks in the window frame. Nathan's throat felt dry as sand. He picked up the lantern and scanned the cabin. No footprints on the floor. The door was still locked, but the air smelled different, colder, damp, earthy, like something had opened underground. He tried to steady his breathing. "You're tired," he muttered. "You're hearing things." Still, he didn't go back to bed. He sat awake by the fire until dawn, staring at the windows, waiting for the sun to burn away whatever had been there. Morning came gray and silent again. No birds, no sound but the creak of melting snow. Nathan stepped outside for the first time since arriving. The air was razor sharp and still. He walked slowly around the cabin, scanning the snow for footprints. Nothing. The snow was untouched, smooth as glass. Except, at the back of the cabin, beneath the eaves, there was a patch where the snow had melted. A perfect circle of bare earth about 2 feet wide. Steam rose faintly from it. Nathan crouched, holding his gloved hand just above the dirt. It was warm. He swallowed hard and brushed the snow away around the edges. Beneath the soil was something wooden, a hatch with an old iron ring handle sunk deep into the grain. He hadn't seen this before. Had it always been here? He hesitated. The voice in his head, the rational one, told him to walk away. But curiosity clawed harder. He pulled. The hatch creaked open with the sound of old wood snapping, and a puff of stale air rushed up from the dark below. It smelled of rot and something else. Something like burnt hair. He shone his phone flashlight down. Wooden steps descended into a black space, narrow and uneven. Storage, he told himself. That's all. But his uncle's words in the journal echoed in his mind. They don't like the light. Nathan hesitated, then climbed down. The cellar wasn't large. The walls were packed earth, and the ceiling hung low. The air was thick, unmoving. Old shelves lined one wall, filled with dusty jars and rusted tools. A wooden chair sat in the center, facing a small stone slab that looked almost like an altar. Carved into the slab was a circle of symbols, crude, jagged lines that seemed burned into the stone rather than chiseled. Nathan lifted his phone closer. The symbols looked wrong, like they twisted slightly when he wasn't looking directly at them. Then he noticed something else. In the dirt behind the altar, the floor bulged upward slightly. He brushed the soil aside. Beneath it was a wooden plank. He pried it up, coughing as dust filled the air. Under the plank was a void, a narrow crawl space filled with darkness, and from inside it faintly came a sound. Whispering. Nathan froze, the flashlight trembling in his hand. He crouched lower, listening. The whispers were clearer now, distinct voices overlapping in a strange rhythmic murmur. Nathan, come back. Open it. He stumbled backward, slamming the plank down, his heart hammering in his chest. The voices stopped instantly. Something knocked from underneath. Once. Hard. Nathan bolted up the steps, slamming the hatch shut above him. Inside the cabin, the air felt wrong again. Still. Too still. He threw more wood on the fire, trying to chase away the chill that seemed to cling to him. He needed to leave. That much was clear now. He could drive into town, find somewhere to stay for the night, come back in daylight with people. Witnesses. He packed quickly, tossing his clothes and the journal into his duffel. But when he reached the front door, the knob wouldn't turn. He tried again. The key wouldn't fit anymore. It was the same key, but the lock resisted, grinding like the metal had shifted. He slammed his shoulder into the door. Nothing. Then, tap, 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 from the window beside the door. Nathan turned slowly. There, pressed against the glass, was a pale face. It looked human, almost, but the eyes were too dark, too deep. The skin was stretched tight, grayish, like old parchment. The mouth opened. No sound came out. Nathan stumbled back, knocking over the lantern. The flame sputtered, flared, and died. Darkness swallowed the cabin, and then the whispering began again. Not outside this time, but beneath the floorboards. Hundreds of voices murmuring in unison. Some laughed softly, others cried, all speaking words he couldn't understand. The floor moved beneath him, a slow, pulsing rhythm, like something breathing under the wood. He ran for the stairs, clutching the journal. The floorboards groaned as he stepped, stretching upward, splintering under invisible pressure. "Stop!" he shouted, voice cracking. "What do you want from me?" For a moment the whispering stopped. Then from below, "You opened it?" The voice was unmistakable. His uncle's. He didn't remember climbing the stairs, only the sudden weight of the door slamming behind him as he locked himself in the bedroom. The whispers grew fainter, replaced by the steady sound of something scratching against the floor downstairs. He sat on the bed shaking, staring at the journal in his hands. Maybe there was something inside it, some explanation. He flipped to the back, searching for pages he hadn't read yet. One entry was tucked between two others, the ink smeared as though written in a hurry. Greater than, if anyone finds this, don't open the hatch. They can't touch the light, but they can whisper through the dark. The voice that calls your name isn't who you think it is. It never is beneath it. A single sentence scratched into the page so deeply it tore the paper. They remember your blood. Nathan's breath caught. His hands were trembling now. He hadn't told anyone about this trip. No one knew he was here. So how had they known his name? That night he didn't sleep at all. The scratching turned to tapping again, then to a rhythmic thumping, as if something beneath the cabin was hitting the floor from below, over and over. He tried the radio, static. He tried his phone, no signal. Sometime around midnight the sound stopped. The silence that followed was worse. Then came the smell, that same burnt hair scent seeping up through the floorboards. The lantern flickered, and from downstairs the hatch creaked open. The sound of the hatch creaking open froze Nathan where he sat. He could hear the wood bending, nails snapping, slow, deliberate. Then came the soft, unmistakable sound of something dragging itself across the dirt. He wanted to believe it was the wind or the house settling. Anything but that sound. But then he heard it again, a faint, wet scrape, followed by a whisper so low it felt more like a vibration than a voice. "Nathan?" He stood up slowly, the lantern shaking in his hand. The smell hit him next, a wave of decay, thick and cloying, rising through the cracks in the floorboards. Nathan stumbled toward the stairs. He didn't want to go down. Every part of him screamed to run, to hide, to do anything but look. But some dark, trembling curiosity, the same that made him open that hatch, dragged him forward. When he reached the bottom of the stairs, the fire was out. The only light came from the dying lantern, its flame flickering like a heartbeat. The hatch in the corner stood wide open. Blackness yawned beneath it. Something had climbed out. He could see the trail, a smear of wet, dark earth leading from the hatch to the middle of the floor. Nathan's throat tightened. "Who's there?" No answer. Just a faint shifting sound, as if something had moved out of sight. He crouched, aiming the lantern toward the dark patch. The beam trembled and caught on something that should not have been there. A hand. It was pale, almost translucent, the skin stretched thin over the bones. Fingernails blackened and cracked. The fingers twitched slightly when the light touched them, as if they were trying to pull away. Nathan staggered back, hitting the wall. The hand vanished, slipping soundlessly beneath the floorboards like it had never been there. The whispering returned, louder now, surrounding him. "He opened it. He let us in." Voices overlapped. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Male, female, old, young. Each one just barely human. Nathan covered his ears. "Stop! Stop it!" But it didn't stop. It grew louder, closer. The walls seemed to hum with it. Then suddenly silence. The lantern went out. Darkness swallowed everything. He fumbled for his phone, thumb pressing desperately for the flashlight. The screen glowed faintly. Battery at 9%. The beam illuminated the floor just long enough for him to see the bulge moving beneath it. The wood rose like something was crawling under the boards, dragging itself slowly toward him. The whisper came again, this time in his ear. "Nathan." He turned, and saw nothing but his own pale reflection in the dark window. Except the reflection smiled. Nathan screamed and threw the phone. It shattered against the stone fireplace. Something laughed in the dark. Not a voice, but a sound like wind passing through hollow bones. He stumbled back and tripped over the rug, hitting the floor hard. Pain shot up his arm. His hand brushed against something cold. The journal. He grabbed it, clutching it like a weapon. "You want me?" he shouted hoarsely. "Come get me!" The floor split open, boards snapped and splintered, and a column of freezing air rushed upward. From the blackness below, countless pale hands reached out, grasping, trembling, clawing toward the light. Nathan screamed again, crawling backward. One of the hands caught his boot, cold and slick. He kicked free and scrambled toward the stairs. He barely made it to the second step before the whispering turned into shrieking. Not angry, pleading. "Don't leave us. Stay. Stay." He slammed the bedroom door shut behind him and collapsed against it, panting. His heartbeat roared in his ears. Minutes passed, or hours. The whispering faded into silence again. When Nathan finally opened his eyes, dawn's first gray light was leaking through the curtains. He dared to look downstairs. The hatch was closed again. The floor was whole. No cracks, no damage. No sign of what he had seen. He wondered if he'd gone mad. But then he noticed the footprints. Wet, muddy footprints leading from the hatch to the middle of the room and then up the stairs. They stopped just outside his bedroom door. Nathan didn't leave the cabin that day. He tried to convince himself it was all exhaustion, trauma, grief, anything. But every time he tried to rest, the faint smell of rot filled the air again. By afternoon, he was pacing. He needed to do something. He opened the journal again, flipping back and forth through the pages, looking for clues. Most of the entries were the same: rambling paranoia, his uncle describing the voices in the trees and faces in the snow. But then, buried near the end, one line stood out. Greater than, "The whispering started the night I found the hollow tree. The one split open like a mouth a place. If he could find that tree, maybe he could figure out what had happened and how to stop it." By dusk, Nathan was dressed in his thick coat, flashlight, and boots, standing at the tree line. The wind had picked up, carrying a faint, almost human tone, the sigh of voices drifting between the pines. He pushed forward anyway. The forest was endless. Every tree looked the same. His flashlight cut a narrow tunnel of light through the snow, revealing twisted roots and animal tracks. The deeper he went, the quieter everything became. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then, after nearly an hour of walking, he saw it. The tree. It was massive, wider than a car, its bark blackened and split down the middle as though struck by lightning. The inside of the trunk was hollow, forming a perfect oval, like an open mouth. As Nathan stepped closer, his breath froze in front of him. The air grew colder with each step. Inside the hollow, something glimmered, a shape half buried in the snow. He reached in and brushed it off. A photograph. It was old, water-damaged, but the faces were clear enough. His uncle, and beside him, Nathan himself as a boy, no older than 12. Nathan dropped it. His heart hammered against his ribs. This made no sense. That picture had never been taken. Then from inside the tree something moved. A hand, the same pale, translucent hand he had seen in the cabin, reached out and touched the edge of the bark. Nathan stumbled backward. The whispering surrounded him, circling through the pines. "You opened it. You're one of us now." He turned and ran. Branches whipped against his face. The forest seemed to twist, every direction leading him deeper instead of out. The whispers grew louder, now coming from inside his head. "You left us once, but we found you again." He didn't stop until he saw the cabin lights through the trees. Only there were too many lights, lanterns, candles, dozens of flickering flames glowing through the windows. He froze. He hadn't lit them, and in the doorway, silhouetted against the glow, stood a figure, tall, thin, unmoving. Nathan whispered, "Uncle?" The figure tilted its head, then it smiled. Nathan stood at the edge of the clearing, breath clouding in the cold. The figure in the doorway didn't move. It just watched, the cabin's candlelight rippling across it so that its outline seemed to shiver. He took one slow step forward. The figure mimicked him. One step, the same pace, the same angle of the head. "Uncle Ray?" His own voice sounded small, swallowed by the snow. The figure smiled again, but it wasn't his uncle's smile. It was too wide, too deliberate, like someone wearing a smile. The light flickered, and the figure was suddenly gone. Only the candles burned inside. Nathan crept to the porch. The door stood ajar, groaning slightly in the wind. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of wax and pine smoke. Candles sat everywhere. On the floor, the stairs, even the table where he'd eaten his first meal here. Someone had arranged them in circles. He whispered, "Who did this?" But no answer came, only the faint drip, drip, drip of melting wax. On the table lay the journal, open to a page he didn't remember reading. The ink was darker than the rest, almost red-brown. Greater than, "The tree is not a door, it's a throat. When it opens, it speaks. When you answer, it remembers." He slammed the cover shut and backed away. A sound rose beneath the floor again, a muffled hum, steady, like a heartbeat deep underground. The flames of every candle leaned toward him. He ran upstairs. In the bedroom, he threw open the window. The forest outside looked endless and wrong, the pines all tilted inward as though bending toward the cabin. He could see the hollow tree far out there, a black split in the whiteness. He whispered to himself, "Get the keys, get the car, go." But when he turned, the keys weren't where he'd left them. The hook by the door was empty. On the desk, beside the lantern, lay the photograph he'd dropped in the woods. It was dry now. A new line of handwriting had appeared at the bottom in the same ink as the journal. "You never left." Nathan felt the room tilt. He stumbled against the wall, gripping the frame. From downstairs came a voice, soft, familiar. "Nathan?" It was his mother's voice. He froze. His mother had died 8 years ago. "Mom? Come down, sweetheart. Please, you're scaring me." He took one step toward the stairs before he stopped himself. His mother never called him sweetheart, not once. The voice came again, thinner, warping slightly. "Come back to the tree. You left us there." Nathan grabbed the lantern and bolted into the hallway. The whispering rose again behind him, hundreds of voices merging into one. He ran out the door and into the woods. The forest closed around him instantly, swallowing the light from the cabin. His boots sank in deep snow, the cold burning his lungs. He could hear them following, faint crunches of snow, the sigh of movement behind the trunks. He didn't look back. He just kept running until the dark mouth of the hollow tree loomed ahead of him. The air around it shimmered faintly, like heat rising from asphalt. The bark looked wet, pulsing in and out as though it were breathing. Nathan lifted the lantern. "What are you?" The tree answered with silence, then a deep, groaning exhale that vibrated through the ground. From inside came a whisper, almost gentle. "Give it back." The light flickered. "Give what back?" "Your name." The wind rose suddenly, scattering snow and ash-colored pine needles. The hollow widened, and the inside of the tree glowed faintly with a dull orange light, as if fire burned far below. Images flickered in the wood grain. His uncle sitting by the fire, eyes hollow, his younger self laughing outside the same cabin. Claire, his ex-girlfriend, turning away from him on the day he left. Each image faded into the next like reflections on water. "Stop it," he shouted. "You're not real." The voices murmured, overlapping now, thousands of them. "Real enough. You heard us first. You opened the mouth." The lantern guttered and died. Total darkness. Only the sound of the wind and his heartbeat. Then something warm dripped onto his hand. Not blood. Sap. Thick, black sap that smelled faintly of iron. The hollow pulsed again, and a low tone echoed through the forest. Snow cascaded from the branches, and the air grew heavy, pressing down on him. Nathan backed away, but his foot caught on something half buried in the snow. He bent down. Another photograph. This one showed the cabin engulfed in flames. In the window, a small boy stood watching. Behind him, the hollow tree whispered, "It's already burning." Nathan ran. Branches lashed his face. Roots clawed his boots. But he didn't stop until the cabin came into view again. Smoke curled from the chimney, even though he'd left no fire burning. Through the window, he saw movement, a shadow pacing slowly inside. He circled to the back door and pushed it open. The warmth hit him instantly. The fire in the hearth blazed high, and the journal lay open before it, pages turning on their own. He stepped closer. The ink on the pages bled and reshaped itself into new words before his eyes. The mouth opened for him again. He walked back inside. He thought he could leave, but he never left. The final line was still forming as he watched. He is writing this now. Nathan's reflection stared back from the glossy, wet ink, and the reflection blinked. He slammed the book shut, heart hammering. The flames dimmed, the room twisting as though the walls were bending inward. He staggered toward the door, but when he grabbed the handle, it wasn't wood anymore. It felt soft, pulsing beneath his palm like living flesh. He yanked his hand away. A low, rumbling voice rose from everywhere at once. "Stay!" The floor heaved. Cracks split across the planks, revealing soil beneath that shimmered faintly with orange light, the same glow as the tree's hollow. From the cracks, roots began to push through, thin and black, writhing like worms. They crawled toward him, twisting around his boots, creeping higher. He grabbed the lantern, smashed it on the ground. Flames leapt up, licking the roots. They recoiled, hissing like snakes. Smoke filled the room. Nathan coughed, covering his mouth. The heat drove him backward toward the door. He threw his shoulder against it, and it burst open. Cold air rushed in. Snow swirled. He stumbled out into the night. Behind him, the cabin burned. From the trees came a single, drawn-out whisper, rising above the crackle of flames. "You can't burn the mouth." He turned toward the sound. The hollow tree stood in the distance, untouched, glowing faintly from within. For a moment, he thought he saw faces moving inside its light. His uncle, his mother, even Claire, all mouthing the same words. Then the snow fell heavier, and they were gone. Nathan fell to his knees, exhausted. The whisper faded into the wind again. He whispered back, voice shaking, "You'll forget me." The forest answered softly, Never. When Nathan woke, the world was gray. He was lying in the snow halfway between the trees and the black shell of the cabin. Thin smoke trailed upward in lazy curls. The roof had collapsed, but small tongues of flame still licked at the corners, stubborn and blue-white. They didn't spread or die, just burned in place, like they were waiting. He sat up slowly. His coat was stiff with frost, his hair crusted with ash. For a moment he couldn't remember how he'd gotten outside. Then the sound came back to him, the roots hissing in the fire, the door that had turned warm and soft under his hand, the whisper that told him to stay. He shivered hard enough that his teeth clicked. He forced himself to stand. The fire had no heat now. He could walk within a few feet of the wall without feeling warmth on his face. The snow around the cabin hadn't melted either. It was as though the flames were only pretending. He circled the wreckage. The back wall had fallen inward, revealing the cellar hatch, open again. Inside, a dull orange light pulsed like a heartbeat. Nathan gripped a fallen branch for balance and called down, "You win. I'm done." No answer, just the low hum of air moving through stone. He almost climbed down then, half out of anger, half out of something that felt like surrender. But another sound stopped him, the low, faraway wail of sirens. For the first time since arriving, Nathan remembered there was still a world beyond the trees. He stumbled through the forest toward the sound. The path twisted, but soon he saw headlights weaving between the pines. 2 county fire trucks and a police SUV crunching slowly through the snow. A firefighter leaned out, shouting, "Hey! You from the cabin?" Nathan lifted a hand. "Yeah." They bundled him into a blanket, asked questions he barely heard. He mumbled answers. Yes, alone. Yes, it was his uncle's place. No. He didn't know how the fire started. The officer's radio crackled. No secondary structures. Fire confined to main cabin. Still burning hot despite snowpack, Nathan turned to look back. The flames were still that eerie blue-white. One firefighter crossed himself. "Never seen fire hold like that. It's burning down, not up." The officer frowned. "Down into what?" They kept him at the small county station overnight for observation. He slept on a cot in the break room, wrapped in a wool blanket that smelled of smoke and coffee. The lights buzzed softly, comforting in their ordinariness. But the whispers followed him there too, barely audible, hiding in the static hum of the fluorescent bulbs. "Nathan!" He sat up, heart thudding. The room was empty. A single lamp flickered by the vending machine. He whispered to the darkness, "You can't be here." The trees miles away. A pause, then faint and patient. "There are roots everywhere." He pressed his palms to his ears until the whisper faded. Morning brought a weak, milky sunlight. An investigator came in with a clipboard. "Cabin still smoldering. We'll need you to come identify the remains." "Remains?" "Furniture, mostly." The man hesitated. "And something else. We found a stairway under the main floor that doesn't show on the plans. Looks old. Hand-carved." Nathan felt cold spread through his chest. "Don't go down there," he said too quickly. "Seal it. Burn it shut." The investigator gave him a curious look. "Already burned, son." But that night, long after they left him alone again, Nathan dreamed of the hollow tree glowing under the snow, its roots spreading like veins toward every town light in the valley. 2 days later, he insisted on returning to the site. The police tape fluttered in the wind. The fire had finally died, or seemed to. The snow had melted in a perfect ring around the ruins, revealing black earth underneath. The cellar hatch was gone, only frozen soil. He stood there a long time, listening. Nothing. No whispers, only the creak of the pines. He almost smiled. Maybe it was finished. Maybe the fire had burned it clean. Then he noticed the smell, faint, sweet, like sap warming in spring. He knelt and brushed the snow aside. The ground beneath his glove was smooth wood, not soil. A single ring pattern curved beneath the frost, like the grain of a tree trunk. He pressed his hand to it. It pulsed once, slowly, like a heartbeat answering his own. Nathan jerked back. The snow had already started to cover the mark again, hiding it as though nothing had been there. The forest whispered one last time, soft enough that he could almost pretend it was the wind. "See you when the thaw comes." Nathan turned and walked away without looking back. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He just kept moving until the whispering was gone and the trees thinned and the world began again. Ordinary, bright, uncaring. But in his pocket, where he thought he'd left nothing, his fingers brushed paper. The photograph. The image had changed. The cabin was gone. Only the hollow tree remained, and someone, tall, thin, indistinct, stood beside it, holding a lantern that burned blue-white. Beneath it, new handwriting had appeared in the same looping script as the journal. "Greater than the fire never dies. It just waits for wood." Nathan dropped the photo and walked faster, not seeing that the snow around his footprints stayed perfectly unmelted, no matter how warm the sun grew. Nathan never meant to stay away for a whole year. He told himself he'd only go far enough to forget the forest sound. But forgetting isn't the same as leaving. He rented a small apartment in the city, took a job fixing computers, and kept the curtains open even at night. Anything to make sure there were no corners for whispers to hide in. For months, it almost worked. Then the phone started ringing at 2 a.m. Each time there was no voice, only a soft hiss like wind moving through pine needles. He changed his number twice. The calls always found him again. He stopped answering. Winter again. The first snow of the next year fell early. Nathan woke to the smell of pine sap coming through his heater vents. He went to the window and saw 3 needles pressed against the glass, as if a branch had grown overnight. He whispered, "Not again." That morning he bought a train ticket back north. He didn't know if he was running toward the forest or away from it, only that the waiting had become worse than whatever waited for him there. 2. Return. The road to the old property had been plowed. A realtor's sign leaned crookedly near the turnoff. Parcel number 47, available for development. No cabin remained, just a low field of snow, smooth and pale. The pines around the clearing stood taller than he remembered, their trunks black against the white. Nathan walked to the center of the field. He found the place where the hatch had been by instinct, as if his feet remembered for him. He knelt and brushed the snow away. Underneath, the ground was not wood this time, just soil, cold, ordinary. He exhaled. It's over. The wind shifted. Somewhere deep in the forest, something exhaled back. 3. The new house. Months later, the first construction crew arrived. They poured foundations, set walls, and by midsummer, a bright modern cabin stood where the old one had burned. Nathan had sold the land for almost nothing. He told himself it would close the circle. But sometimes at night he dreamed of the workers' voices muffled under the snow, their laughter turning into whispering. He dreamed of nails bending, saws stopping mid-cut, the faint hum of the earth beneath their boots. He woke with the taste of ash in his mouth. 4. The letter. One morning, a plain envelope arrived with no return address. Inside was a single photograph. The new cabin, finished. Windows bright, smoke curling from the chimney. In the foreground, a man, woman, and small boy waving at the camera. A happy family. But in the reflection of the window behind them stood Nathan, lantern in hand, watching. He dropped the photo, heart thudding. His phone buzzed, a news alert. Greater than small electrical fire damages new home on Hollow Road. Family unharmed. He didn't open the article. He already knew what it would say. Fire contained to subfloor. Source unknown. Still burning hot despite snowpack. 5. The last visit he returned one final time in early spring. The forest smelled of thaw and rot. The snow gone except in the shadows. Where the new cabin had stood was only a shallow depression of blackened soil. The realtors had pulled their sign down. Nathan walked until he found the hollow tree. It was smaller now, its bark pale and brittle. The split down its center had closed almost completely, leaving only a narrow seam. He placed his hand against it. You remember, don't you? The bark was cool, solid, lifeless. Birds called overhead. For the first time in years, he felt the forest breathe normally. He turned to leave. Then faintly from behind him, "Thank you." He spun back. The seam in the bark was gone, smooth as untouched wood. He waited a long time, but the tree said nothing more. 6. 1 year later, Nathan lives by the sea now. He works on boats, fixes radios, keeps his hands busy. Salt air has replaced the scent of pine. Sometimes when the wind comes from the north, he hears the faint rustle of needles, not whispering, just wind. He listens without fear. He knows now that the forest never wanted him to die. It only wanted to be remembered. 7. The postcard. Every December, a postcard arrives at his mailbox with no stamp. Each shows the same thing, a snow-covered clearing and a single tree standing at its center. On the back, the same message, always in the same looping hand. We're still whispering, but softer now. Nathan keeps them in a drawer. He doesn't answer. Some things you acknowledge only by silence. That winter, on the first heavy snow, he walks down to the shore and lights a small candle in a glass jar. The flame shivers but doesn't go out. He whispers into the wind, "Rest." Far away, deep in some unseen forest, 1,000 pines sway once in unison, like a breath drawn and released. The sound is almost like words, but not quite. It's enough.